What's up, YouTube world? Coming back again. Coming up for week 4. Week 3's in the books, and it was another good one. It's almost like I don't have enough channels or enough spaces on my TV to watch all of the football that I really want to. I find myself either coming in when I'm flipping back and forth because everybody wants to be on a commercial at the same damn time. So I can't, for some reason, watch every game. I would need 10 TVs and 10 different satellite boxes to watch all my games, and I just can't do it. So I end up watching half the shit on replays and it's killing me. But nevertheless, week 4 is coming up. Week 3 is in the books. Some really, really good games, some statements made, some people dropped the ball, whatever, what have you. Start off Notre Dame, Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech riding high coming into it, facing future ACC foe Notre Dame. And Notre Dame showed even with the quarterback, they can still win ball games. So they took care of business. And, enough said. I picked Notre Dame to win the game to begin with. So it was really no surprise to me, I guess, kind of. Stanford over USC. I picked USC to win the game, but I also talked about how Stanford always seems to be a thorn in the side because you can never tell rivalry games. There's always that possibility when it's a rivalry. And Stanford went to prove it. And Stanford pulled the upset over the big old Trojans. They had hopped back in the top 25 after being knocked out early. Ole Miss capitalizing on Alabama mistakes. I can't remember. I'm not the smartest person alive, but I cannot remember the last time that a team beat Nick Saban 2 years in a row. It's been a long time since anyone's been able to say it. And I'm always the one talking about making bets and games and this, that, and the other. And I didn't make a bet on this one, thank God. But, talking about you're not beating Nick Saban twice. Even when Johnny Manziel was in Texas A&M and they beat Alabama, you're not going to beat Nick Saban 2 years in a row. Well, the Ole Miss boys did it. And shout out to my boy Winston out there. And I know that he was going crazy during the game because how often does that really happen? UCLA over BYU. I know I talked a lot about how good BYU was, and they showed it. Close game. I picked UCLA to win it anyways. Didn't think it was going to be as close as it was, but good game. Very good game. Georgia over South Carolina. I know that I didn't even really talk about it last week. Georgia's just so much better than the Gamecocks are, and the Gamecocks are in trouble this year. I really got news for them. A lot of my friends back in Columbia, South Carolina are probably, swearing me up and down watching this, but I mean, you're in deep trouble. You boys have got some games coming up that are going to get real ugly, and to be completely honest with you, a bowl game this year is going to be your goal. Not winning the East, making it to a bowl game, because they've got some tough games ahead of them. They're not as deep as they usually are. Their talent isn't where it should be. They've lost a lot of people in the last 2 years, and they got to figure some things out because it's going to start getting rough. They've got LSU this year, and Florida's not going to be an easy wash, and the Gamecocks better get ready for it. Miami, ACC, Big Ten, taking down Nebraska in overtime. ACC will never, ever hear me root for Miami. Ever. I was rooting for the ACC, not for Miami. But, nevertheless, Miami with a win over Nebraska in the OT. By Felicia, in the other words. They looked okay. Miami's going to be good. It's going to be a shootout in the Coastal this year as far as Virginia Tech, Miami, and Georgia Tech go. North Carolina, depending on which page they want to play on. Duke, depending on which page they want to play on. To be honest with you, whatever page Virginia Tech wants to play on, because they look good against Purdue. And I know it's Purdue, but, I mean, come on. They still put up 50 points. I can't even remember the last time Virginia Tech put up 50 points. It was a good game. I know it was in Purdue. It was the first time those two have ever played. ACC had a lot of Big Ten games. So, I guess the statement was kind of made to show how the middle class of the conferences would fare against each other. And I mean, by statistics, you have to say the ACC. Duke, Northwestern. Duke was up early. I thought they were going to be a lot closer coming down to the end. They just couldn't hang on there, and Northwestern beat them out. So that's a recap of week 3. We got week 4 coming up. We've got talk about some conferences a little bit. Go over some new Heisman front runners. Oh, and there's one game I forgot. LSU Auburn. I don't know if anybody else watched this one. Fournette. The SEC year in and year out has a tailback. Last year was Todd Gurley, followed up by Chubb. And we talked about Fournette last year, but maybe not just to the complete extent of it. Leonard Fournette is probably one of the best tailbacks the SEC has seen in probably 10 years. I mean, there's been some good ones. There's been some really, really good ones. This man looks like he runs like with the power of Herschel Walker, but he reminds you of Bo Jackson, except with an attitude. I know that's two big names to put together, but he's a mixture of Herschel and Bo with an attitude. And he beat up on Auburn. He beat up on Auburn. So, he's that good. So we'll get into some Heisman talk a little bit and then talk about what's coming up in week 4. All right. Week 3 is in the books. Week 4 coming up. Let's talk a little bit about some conferences going on. I don't think there's a shift in the number one. SEC still got to be your number one conference. Even with Ole Miss beating Alabama, those are two still powerhouse schools. Georgia's showing that they've still, don't mark them off as anything. In LSU, if anybody watched my videos from last year, I talked about how the youth at LSU was, they were exactly what the word is. They were youth. They were young. And now people are starting to get it together as far as that talent and maturity on that team. And with Fournette and the quarterback situation and the defense and everything, not quite, I don't think, not right this second. I don't think that LSU is going to win the SEC this year. Next year, most definitely. It's a possibility this year. The SEC West is just too deep as far as talent goes, and I don't see LSU, not with just a little question marks here and there, being able to run the West this year. Alabama's going to be coming out with a serious vengeance with a loss. They always do. Whenever they drop one, just like last year, except in the Ohio State game, they always tend to come out firing. So, don't just because Alabama got beat, don't think that they're going to slide. And don't think Ole Miss ain't going to slide somewhere either, because they've got a lot of tough games. And don't forget, LSU is a rivalry game against Ole Miss. So that's a big one. Nevertheless, SEC is still on the top of the throne as far as the kings of college football in the conference. I like to say the Big Ten still. Michigan State, let's be honest. They're good. They're good. And, Ohio State, Cordell Jones came out. They took him out of the game and brought in J.T. Barrett. That's like saying I took out Tom Brady and put in Peyton Manning, or vice versa. There's no difference there. There's no difference there. Both of those quarterbacks go start anywhere in the whole country right now on any team besides for maybe 3. Period. Anybody would love to have those boys on their team. So saying that you took out Cardale Jones and put in JT Barrett is like saying I took out Bart Starr and put in Roger Staubach. Like, come on, man, let's go. Whatever. The dude threw two picks. He wasn't playing the best game of his life, and they took him out and put in another A-plus player. So, nevertheless, Big Ten, still is number 2 to me, maybe tied for second. I'm even going to say tied for second with the Pac-12. Their top seeds are very good, and their middle class is their middle tier is very solid as well. So I'm going to say number 2 is tied between the Big 12 or the Big 10 and the Pac-12. Coming up third is the fourth is the Big 12. Or third or fourth, whatever, because the Pac-12 and the Big 10 are tied for 2. Whatever you want to call it. You got TCU, really good. Mayfield and Oklahoma, they're looking really good. I'm not going to say, of course, Baylor, always solid. Besides for that, there's really not a lot of talent. You got Oklahoma State. But besides that, yeah, it's just not there. I wouldn't think so. I'm not an expert or anything. I just watch a lot of football. It's definitely not Texas because, damn, you guys, woo, what's going on? What's going on with them Longhorns? It ain't pretty in Austin right now. It's not pretty. Maybe the coaching decision was a bad idea. Maybe your athletic department got some issues going on. Nevertheless, wow, you guys. Sorry about your luck. Now, can't talk too much shit, but I'd probably say there's a lot of teams in the ACC that can beat Texas. So, ACC's dead last, I think, as far as conference goes. Our middle tier showed okay. We scored pretty well against the Big Ten last weekend. Georgia Tech still not a pushover. I classified Notre Dame as ACC. They might as well be. They will be. Clemson, even though it was close with Louisville, it's Louisville on a Thursday night, and they always kind of give somebody trouble, and Clemson sometimes just struggles when they shouldn't. Florida State, a win's a win. Boston College didn't put up a single point, so you got to give somebody some type of credit, whether it be their defense or, what have you. But, a win's a win, so you got to take the couple. You got Clemson, Florida State, Georgia Tech's not a pushover. Miami just beat Nebraska. It's not saying a whole lot. In the mediocre teams, Miami, Virginia Tech, NC State. There's some talent there. I would like to think so. So that'll pretty much do it for your conference wrap up. So let's get into our Heisman talk a little bit. Now let's talk about the Heismans. I know that I talked about Cardale Jones a lot, and I know he had a bad game. Not saying that he's out of the thought for being a Heisman, but as far as numbers and performances go, the pizzazz, the flash, the show game, along with the yardage, he's going to be out of the talks for a little bit. Getting benched, throwing a couple picks against Northern Illinois. But the man of the hour, you got to talk about Fournette. I talked about the Jackson Walker combo with attitude. That's him. He runs with agility. He runs with flash. He runs with patience. He finds gaps. He runs over people. He outruns people. LSU better seriously enjoy him being there, because when a team has a player like that, and I don't like to reference, Virginia Tech all the time, but uh, teams like Florida when they had Tebow, Virginia Tech when they had Michael Vick, Texas when they had Vince Young. When a not so much, obviously you can't compare a player when they get to the NFL, measure a college player by what he does in college football. When teams have players like that on their team, everyone else seems better because he's that good. And, you know, he makes everything around him look better. So you have to talk about him being the top of the list, especially after the performance against Auburn. After that has got to be Nick Chubb. You've got to talk about how good he's going to be. I mean, even, you know, as a tailback in the SEC, obviously he's going to be taking the back seat to Fournette after last weekend. But Nick Chubb's still probably the second, you know, he's one of the best tailbacks in the country. And he could start anywhere he wanted to go, besides probably LSU. So you got to put him in number 2. Boykin from TCU, he's been quiet. You know, mediocre game, first game of the year, you can't judge anybody on that. Kids winning ball games out there in TCU, and they're very, very good. So do not overlook Boykin and TCU. Mayfield from Oklahoma, he's starting to get into a little bit of a rhythm. I know Oklahoma likes to put out Heisman quarterbacks. Don't sleep on him. If they can run the table, he's definitely got to be in the discussion. I'm going to throw somebody out there, probably not ever going to win the Heisman, but as far as everything else goes, Matt Johnson from Bowling Green is, and if anybody plays FanDuel or, you know, DraftKings, anything like that, this kid is throwing numbers. He's throwing big numbers, lots of touchdowns. Granted, it's Bowling Green. Granted, they're not playing anybody. They're losing. Whatever. You know, he's throwing big numbers. So I just got to throw a little bit of a shout out like that and give credit where credit's due. Let's get into the week 4 coming up and talk about some of the big games. All right, week 4 coming up. We got some big games. One of the first ones I'm going to throw out is BYU Michigan. We've got Jim Harbaugh coming up on BYU. BYU coming off a tough loss against UCLA. I'm going to take BYU. Michigan's only allowed like 2 passing touchdowns all year. BYU's going to change that, and I think BYU has got what it takes to beat the Michigan defense. So BYU over Michigan. Auburn, Mississippi State. Auburn made a quarterback change. You know, big game coming in against Mississippi State. What to expect, I don't know. It could be interesting. I know Auburn hasn't dropped 2 in a row in a very long time. I'm going to go with Mississippi State on this one. Both teams need this to get it going for the rest of the year. They both dropped out of the top 25. I'm going to take Mississippi State over Auburn. Kentucky, Missouri. Now, Missouri, tough game last week against, I think it was Connecticut, like final score like 9-6. So, you know, if we're playing baseball, that's cool. I'm taking Kentucky. I like them as they're quiet. You know, you do not a lot of people talking about them. You know, it's just an SEC this and blah, blah, blah. Taking Kentucky over Mizzou. UCLA, Arizona. UCLA still riding the win. So I got to take UCLA over Arizona. Oregon and Utah. Now, Oregon looking to bounce back. Utah's not a sleeper. I got to take Oregon. You know, they lost to Michigan. They got some positions they need to refill. Utah's very good, but I think Oregon might be close, but I'm going to take Oregon in this one. Arizona State, Southern California. They are going to come out firing on all cylinders. Arizona State had a tough time controlling Texas A&M in the air. You think that USC isn't going to be throwing this ball in this game? You're out of your minds. USC going to come out firing after that loss to Stanford. USC convincingly over Arizona State. Duke, Georgia Tech. Duke looking maybe to shake up a little bit in the Coastal. If Duke drops this one, I don't know. I think I'm going to take Georgia Tech. I'm coming off a tough loss to Notre Dame. They're a really good football team, and I think that they've got a lot of talent. So I think that Georgia Tech should beat Duke. There's your picks for week 2. I'm 14-5 on the season right now. Some good Pac-12 games this year or this week. But nevertheless, it's week 4. It's week 4 already, and college football is where it's at. So everybody have a wonderful Thursday and Friday of football and a Saturday of football. Have a safe weekend, and look forward to seeing you guys back next week. Have a great weekend of football. See you next time.